The precedent has been set. I can show you Donald Trump's mugshot. The second the communists took power, they had Donald Trump arrested in every jurisdiction in the United States of America. They tried to blow his head off and send him to prison for 90 years. So don't tell me former presidents are untouchable. No, sir. The president of the United States of America cooked the books on his orders of intelligence in order to create a false narrative about the incoming president who was about to be sworn in. He used the Central Intelligence Agency like it was the DNC. He used the FBI like it was the DNC. He used the DNI like it was the DNC, politicking with his office. That is a crime so severe, Barack Obama should never see the light of day again. He deserves a trial, a fair trial, a public trial, because that's what the American people deserve. And then he deserves to go to prison for the rest of his natural life. And not just because I hate him, but because the next time we get a scumbag like that in the Oval Office, he has to look at Barack Obama rotting in Fort Leavenworth and say to himself, well, I guess the CIA probably isn't my political arm, so maybe I should back off of that. This moment, I'm not just saying this for radio purposes, is everything for this.
Well, there's one thing to want it, and there's one thing for me to run my mouth on TV about it. It's another thing entirely to actually get it. And as I've explained, I'm a little jaded on that. Joining me now, my friend, somebody probably a little bit more jaded than I am, FBI whistleblower, co-host of the American Radicals podcast, Steve Friend. Okay, Steve, I'm not naive enough to think that Barack Obama's going to jail. I understand the way our country works, the way accountability works here, and I've explained that to people. But in your mind, is anyone?
Well, this is my tremendous concern here, because you just got to go back about 3 weeks to when the DOJ effectively punted on the Epstein question, when we had a fundamental question there. And it's outside of even the abuse of children question, which should be abhorrent and disgusting to everyone. But the fundamental question there was, do we in fact have a two-tiered system of justice where the rest of us get held accountable for things we even didn't do if we took a guided tour through the Capitol, and the elite pedophile rapists can just do whatever they want to whoever they want? And the DOJ effectively voted present. So we didn't get that answer adjudicated. Now we have a second bite of the apple here, and my concern is perhaps this is an effort afoot by the Department of Justice, by the FBI, to get off the X, get out of the spotlight from the Epstein concerns. But what they've done now is paint themselves in another corner, because the same question exists. Do we have a two-tiered system of justice? And the onus is on the Department of Justice to provide us that answer and to go forward with an effective and smooth and quick investigation, because check your calendars here. It's already at the end of July 2025. We don't have the time to wait for years on end until a Pharaoh who knows not Joseph is back in the White House and turning the FBI and his political enemies.
Okay, Steve, let's rewind and actually do this chronologically then. The Epstein stuff. What is your take on the overpromising and the under-delivering? I have a theory, and it's only a theory, I don't have any intel on this, that Trump knew his name was in there, whether it was added after the fact, which I believe, or not. Trump knew his name was in there. He knew something else was coming. He wanted to move people off of it and say, hey, drop this thing and let it go. But that's just my theory. What's your take?
I think that's a fair theory, and it's completely plausible, because we had a lame duck period after Donald Trump was elected president the second time. And we know for a fact from other whistleblowers, like my buddy Garrett O'Boyle, that there were documents being destroyed over at the FBI. Who's to say that they weren't manipulated? But I want to go back to what you mentioned about having promises, making promises of having a deliverable, and then on a specific delivery date, and not doing that. And it's not limited to just Epstein. We were promised information about the January 6th involvement from personnel at the FBI, about the January 5th/6th pipe bomber, about the Dobbs leak, about the White House cocaine. The list just seems to go on, and they're failing to deliver on these, and kind of come around to the belief that the word transparency is a code word for people on the GOP and the MAGA. I mean, the liberal and the Democrat and the communists, they like to use democracy. That's their code word for things I like. If you don't like what I like, you don't like democracy. My fear is that transparency has the exact same hold for the MAGA right in this country, where they claim to be transparent, but they're not really being transparent with what we want them to be. And that should be enormously concerning to us, because there will never be a time where they're in charge forever. This is the opportunity to actually turn this stuff over. And to the Epstein stuff, like, If Donald Trump is in fact on that list, or one of his buddies, or if there's foreign relations or intelligence purposes, whatever the justification is for not turning that information over, you have to end that justification with the following phrase. So that's why I let the elite pedophile rapists go free. And you cannot sign me up for that culture or that country. I don't care if it destroys our culture. I don't care if it destroys our country. Our culture and our country deserve to go down the toilet bowl if that in fact is true.
Steve, would you explain, before we move back to the other subject, would you explain in a law enforcement, some guy experienced in this terms, why there's not an actual list for people? You know, we like to use that term, but there's boxes and boxes of files, but not a list.
Well, that would be a work product, a list. I mean, I don't think that Jeffrey Epstein kept a Rolodex where he said, these are the pedophile cohorts that I have, and I like to maintain this. This would be a work product that would be generated by investigators going through and looking and cataloging the video and the travel footage and conducting interviews and subpoenaing records, and it would be collected, and you would have a list of individuals who are of interest or potentially criminal masterminds or engaging in felonious activity. It would essentially be derivative of a proper investigation. It's not like any sort of black book existed, and if it did, he would possibly be the worst criminal of all time. I mean, you don't take notes of a criminal conspiracy unless you want to go to prison.
All right, let's switch back to the other big old mess on our hands. James Comey's catching a bunch of flack right now, and I mean, who knows whether he goes down or not, but it almost bothers me that it seems like Christopher Wray is missing all this stuff, as if he didn't have anything to do with any of it.
Christopher Wray, apparently he's Voldemort. We can't say his name anymore. And look, I just want to raise the concern that all of the whistleblowers who came forward during Joe Biden's administration were all complaining about events that were going on during the Christopher Wray tenure at the FBI, which leads me to a couple of different suspicions. When Kash Patel, Dan Bongino got into leadership, they were completely bubble wrapped and ensconced by people who were there and whispering sweet nothing to their ears, saying, let's go show you the James Comey room, because he was sort of outside the statute of limitations, not really grabbable. But Christopher Wray, we have radical traditional Catholic intelligence products. We have the January 6th abuses. We have parents at school board meetings being surveilled. All of this is at his feet, and he has lied, and provably so, perjured himself. I want his name out there, and he's just sort of evaded attention. I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay. The FBI, I know there are a lot of very evil people still working inside of that building. There's no question about it. Have we gotten rid of any of them? Have there been any positive reforms? Have you seen anything good coming from inside of that building? Please tell me yes.
Well, when it comes to the personnel matters, they certainly have gone the exact opposite direction of what I would like to see. And that would be the promotion of Stephen Jensen, who was the effective warlord of January 6th, the section chief of the domestic terrorism operations section. He architected how the FBI did that entire thing. He's been promoted multiple times. He's now the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office. I have it on good authority. He's actually going to be promoted again back into headquarters situation. Brian Driscoll, who was the acting director before Kash Patel took the helm, who refused to hand over the list of personnel who were involved, inappropriately so, with January 6th to the Department of Justice. He's been promoted. Spencer Evans, who went after personnel who refused to get the experimental gene juice jabbed into their arm, he's been promoted and moved over to headquarters. So this list continues to grow. It's tremendously concerning. And I can only throw it back to the most benign and innocent reason for that is, and I think that there was a erroneous approach as it came to leadership when Kash and Dan got in there, and they went in trying to win hearts and minds with the presupposition falsely that a lot of good men and women work at the FBI and they just need to be restored to rigorous obedience to the Constitution. But unfortunately, they've been weighed, measured, and found wanting in that regard, and they just stood by and just followed orders. And they are the snakes behind the scenes that are effectively getting those guys distracted from their job of delivering on the mandate the American people sent last November of wanting this agency brought to heel and completely de-weaponized.
Steve, Pam Bondi, I know that she's been a disappointment, to put it mildly, so far, but do we think that she has what it takes to take down a powerful, a John Brennan, a James Comey? Does she have what it takes?
Well, she already passed on the Epstein stuff 3 weeks ago. I don't think she gets a second bite of the apple here, particularly because it involves her boss, the President of the United States, and the fact that the Department of Justice and the Intelligence Committee tried to run a coup against his first presidency. This is her opportunity, and it cannot be, we're going to bring on a special prosecutor, we're going to drag this out into 2029. At the end of the day, it'll be too late to do anything, because that's always how it is, just so conveniently. The American people deserve answers on this specific Russiagate matter, and they deserve them in a timely fashion, in a way that we can actually adjudicate justice and answer the question of, do we have this two-tier system of justice or not? And if the answer is yes, then she's atop an agency that is in charge of that two-tiered system. And that should be something that we are all fearful of, because you never know whose hands it's going to fall into next.
Steve, thank you, brother, as always. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.